Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a massive paradigm shift in global conflict, the weaponization of the supply chain. We're moving way past the traditional battlefield here. Instead, we're looking at how the incredibly intricate networks that deliver our everyday goods have been completely transformed into modern-day Trojan horses. Using some newly published research and breaking investigative reports, we're going to examine the mechanics of this hidden front line. Let's dive right in.
To really grasp the scale of this threat, we actually have to start small, like incredibly small. 6 grams, that's it. That is the exact weight of a little sheet of white PETN plastic explosive. To put that into perspective, that's roughly the weight of a quarter sitting in your pocket right now. Yet, in September 2024, that minuscule, tiny amount of hidden explosive, multiplied across thousands of devices, literally altered the geopolitical landscape of the Middle East.
The real-world impact of slipping those tiny little explosives into a totally mundane delivery of communications equipment was, well, it was devastating. Across Lebanon, thousands of pagers belonging to members of the militant group Hezbollah detonated simultaneously. And the wild part is, they often exploded right after beeping to indicate an incoming message. The toll? 39 dead and over 3,400 wounded. It was an unprecedented blow, and it wasn't delivered by a missile strike, it was delivered by a shipping manifest.
So how do they do it? The engineering that made this possible relied on some absolute brilliant deception. On the outside, the AR-94 Pages battery pack looked like a completely standard Li-BT73 lithium-ion unit, totally normal. But on the inside, operatives had sandwiched that 6 grams of PETN explosive right between 2 rectangular battery cells. And here's the absolute kicker: they didn't use a standard metallic detonator, no way. They used a highly flammable strip of material that was entirely metal-free. This meant that when the procurement teams ran these pagers through standard airport X-ray scanners to check for bugs or bombs, absolutely nothing suspicious showed up. Zero.
But engineering the bomb was only half the operation. The other half was straight-up corporate espionage. These operatives had to bypass some notoriously strict, paranoid procurement due diligence. So what did they do? They built a legend. A completely fabricated, airtight backstory from the ground up. Step 1, they licensed a legitimate Taiwanese brand, Gold Apollo, which gave them the right to design a pager under a trusted, known name. Step 2, they built a totally fake corporate website for a non-existent distributor called Apollo Systems HK. And Step 3, to back up the existence of this brand new, custom battery that wasn't actually anywhere on the market, they literally seeded fake battery enthusiast forums with glowing reviews.
Just think about the meticulous lengths they went to just to legitimize this trap. Back in April 2023, a fake forum user going by the handle Mike Vogue posted this exact quote: "I know this product. It's got a great datasheet and a great performance." I mean, they even boasted on their fake website that the battery had an 85-day autonomy and could be recharged via USB. They were methodically, painstakingly praising a battery whose main feature was actually a lethal payload.
Okay, so you have a perfect fake backstory, but the operation still requires the target to actually buy the devices, right? The operatives accomplish this using the most standard business tactic in the book: aggressive pricing. The operative, who was acting as the salesperson, just continually dropped the price of these AR-924 pagers until the procurement manager simply couldn't refuse the deal. The bait was taken, and the rigged supply chain flowed right into the target's hands.
Now, stepping back from the microscopic spy thriller details of this specific plot, a newly published research agenda by academic Manmohan Sodhi and his colleagues actually gives us a framework to understand this systemically. They define what we just saw as supply chain infiltration. In simple terms, this is the insertion of products and actors into a supply chain, totally without the knowledge of its operators. It's basically secretly piggybacking on trade routes. Cartels do it when they hide fentanyl precursors in dog food shipments, traffickers do it when they hide elephant tusks in timber shipments, and while intelligence agencies do it when they hide explosives in pagers.
But here's the thing. Infiltration is usually just the setup. The grand finale is what researchers define as supply chain interdiction. This is the intentional disruption of the movement of materials or products. Sometimes, it's the DEA seizing a shipment of drugs. That's an interdiction, a disruption of an illegal supply chain. Sometimes, it's a government putting sanctions on computer chips to slow down a rival nation. And sometimes, it's a catastrophic, targeted explosion designed to instantly dismantle a whole militant group's communication network.
If we map this out, all of these real-world headlines fit neatly into the academic intersection of overt and covert operations.
So if a public, legal operation like U.S. tariffs targets an overt supply chain like Chinese chips, that falls right into the category of an overt counteroperation on an overt network. Pretty straightforward. If an overt agency like the DEA targets a covert drug network, the dynamics shift slightly. But consider the covert counteroperations. Secretly blowing up the overt Nord Stream gas pipeline? That's a covert attack on an overt system. But the exploding pager plot? That is a purely covert counteroperation infiltrating a completely covert network.
The researchers specifically categorized the exploding pagers under this concept of infiltrate to interdict. And honestly, this takes incredible patience. Operatives had to maintain the continuity of the target supply chain for months, making sure the pagers were ordered, shipped, delivered, and distributed without a hitch. The infiltration had to be absolutely flawless in order to execute that massive interdiction at the precise, perfect moment of their choosing.
And when you apply this across the entire physical flow of global logistics, you start to see how covert actors can target vulnerabilities at basically any stage. Look at the flow here. A supply chain can be attacked at its source, during processing, along transportation links like cargo ships or DHL hubs, or even right at the demand stage. The interconnectedness of our modern global value chains means that a vulnerability anywhere is essentially a vulnerability everywhere.
And that exact interconnectedness leads us to a really crucial, terrifying concept: collateral damage. When these shadow wars spill over into our everyday logistics, the direct target is rarely the only victim. The research highlights some massive secondary impacts. We're talking civilian casualties. We see massive environmental disasters like the unbelievable amount of methane released from the Nord Stream sabotage. We see severed telecom and internet cables in the Baltic Sea that disrupt entire nations. We see economic shocks and skyrocketing consumer energy prices. We've even seen threats to commercial aviation, like the recent discovery of incendiary devices that were literally planted inside massage units at DHL centers in Germany and the UK.
Which brings us to the really profound, kind of scary implications for standard global shipping and, frankly, our everyday commerce. Think about this for a second. This militant group operates under a constant, heavy state of paranoia. They employ rigorous security and due diligence, yet their procurement managers were totally fooled by a fake web store, some phony forum reviews, and a discount. So, if a highly suspicious organization can have its supply chain weaponized so thoroughly without even noticing, how safe are the supply chains of our standard corporate retailers and logistics providers?
We are officially entering an era where any supply chain can be weaponized. It's not just about delayed shipments or getting a counterfeit designer bag anymore. We're talking about real, physical societal risk. As global trade networks increasingly become the new battlegrounds for espionage and warfare, we really have to ask, will the hidden weaponization of our supply chains eventually arrive at your doorstep? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Until next time, keep questioning the systems that run our world.